11:30 at night. However, he eventually got me, so praise the Lord. Well, like he said, I'm his older sister, and I just thank the Lord for all that He's brought me through. I just want to real quickly tell you that I do a lot of prison ministry, and go to the jails and the prisons and the detention centers and so forth. And what I have found is nobody, when they're growing up, says, "Oh, I can't wait till I grow up so I can go to prison." That's not what you think about, right? But what happens is usually people are hurt, and then they get mad, and then they do stupid stuff. And that's what happened to me. My father left my mother, and I was only about 10 or 11 years old. And I told my two younger brothers that we were going to hate her forever, that awful woman. And then the night that I was turning 13, I was waiting for my dad to bring me a present, because that was a big deal, 13. And at midnight, my mom came in and she said, "You know that woman is not going to let your dad bring you a present." I said, "Yes, he is." Well, about 2 in the morning, I heard the clock go cuckoo, cuckoo, and I knew he wasn't coming. So I promptly went to my mother's purse, took out a pack of Philip Morris cigarettes, went into the bathroom, and lifted up the window and smoked every single cigarette. And as I smoked them, I said this: "No one is ever going to hurt me again." And that's when I got hurt and I got angry. I started climbing out the window at night and running around and doing terrible things. And finally, when I was 15, I guess I thought I was going to be an old maid, so I got married. And about 4 days after I got married, my husband went overseas, and I was going to keep it a secret until he got back from his tour of duty. And my mother somehow found out, and so she kicked me out. She said, "If you're old enough to be married, you're old enough to be on your own."
Hey, we're having fun out here.
We're so on fire for the Lord, they sent a fire truck.
Right. Amen.
So anyway, so now I'm out. Well, I had a stepsister that was 3 years older than me, so I called her and convinced her that we could get an apartment and we'd be fine. So she got a few bucks together and we got an apartment. I'm 15, she's 18, and the telephone company here in Sacramento was on strike, and so we got a job with a telephone company. I was a telephone operator. And then one thing led to another, and my husband's sister had just had a baby. She was also 15. And when the baby got out of the hospital, she moved into the apartment with us, with the baby.
Big fire. That was
7 times.
You're lost. Comes the third time. Yeah.
So anyway, I was not being a bad girl. My dad had forced my brothers and me to go to catechism classes, and I had learned, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not commit adultery and all that, so I'm not being that bad. But anyway, Millie, my sister-in-law, was bad, and she was going out on dates and leaving us to babysit. And I was really a good thief. I'd steal diapers off clothesline and milk out of stores, and we're taking care of this baby. So one night, she came in and I said, "We are not watching your kid anymore. You're out." So I had all her stuff packed, threw the baby out. The landlord lady heard about it and she threw us out. Now we're all out. So in the meantime, my sister and I had become friends with a woman who said we could move in with her, and sin has a way of always going downhill and getting worse. And this girl rode motorcycle with the Hells Angels. So that's how I got started riding with the Hells Angels. And I loved it. in the Hells Angels, nobody uses their real name. Like the president's Rocky, the treasurer was Duke. Well, my name was Dingaling. That So, in the meantime, while I'm doing all that, my husband's overseas, and of course he has no idea what I'm doing. And one night we went up to Northern California to do what they call a run, which is just an excuse to get drunk and dance, you know. And I used to ride a motorcycle with a little guy, we called him Little Bill, and I was his big mama, I guess. And so while we're up there dancing, I'm with this guy, and so I thought, well, Little Bill, I said, I'm going back with Cecil. And he looks up at me and he says, you came with me and you're going home with me. And I thought, great, I'll dump you later. So about 300 of us went into Stan, I think it was Stan's Driving back then. And we waited and waited for Cecil. But Cecil never showed up because he was in an accident and he was paralyzed from the neck down. Well, that kind of got me scared. So I moved back in with my mom. I talked her into it. I don't like rules, so 2 weeks later I'm out. And by this time, Millie and I had reconciled. You know, she's my sister-in-law. And she had married this guy who was a gangster. So I move in with Millie, and pretty soon, Millie's out and I'm in with my brother-in-law. And now I know I'm a sinner. So he and his uncle would drop me off at the movies, and then they'd pick me up after the movie was over, and I said, what are you guys doing while I'm in the movies? He said, what do you think we're doing? And he had a big old scar like this, and he had a holster with his gun, and they were out committing robberies. And I said, well, I'm leaving. He says, if you leave, I'll kill you. So they started locking me in the apartment. It was a basement apartment. And one night, I got so drunk that I took every dish, every glass, and I threw them against the concrete walls. And if you've ever been a drinker, you know that that'll sober you up real quick. When I thought, he is going to kill me. So there was a very narrow window above the sink, and we were at ground level there. And so I broke the window out and squeezed through and went back home again. My mom let me come back in again. Well, my husband comes from overseas, but I certainly didn't tell him about my lifestyle. And he went to work for my dad. Well, when it was payday, he didn't want to go by himself to my dad's house. So he made me go with him. And my stepmother and my dad, they were not Christians until God sprinkled black widow spiders all around their house, and they had to call the pest control man. It was Calyx Pest Control, and that man led them to the Lord. Glory!
That's what your dad sounded like.
He's got a voice.
Your dad sounded like that. He was singing.
So anyway, I would go with him, and Margie, my stepmother, I hated her. She stole my daddy. Anyway, she'd start preaching to me. Well, I'd blow my smoke in her face, and I'd cuss at her a little bit. And then one time, she told me Jesus was coming back, and I was going to be in big trouble. Well, I'd never heard that. The only thing I knew about the Bible was that Daniel didn't get eaten up in the lion's den. Other than that, I didn't know anything about the Bible. So anyway, she just kept on, and she said, she showed me a verse in the Bible that said the blood was going to run up to the horses' bridles. So that night when I went home, I dreamt I was floating in blood, and it scared me. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go to this. It was a little home Bible study just one time to get her off my back. And I figured the woman would have a bun on her head and no makeup and hair hanging down from her pits, you know. But when I got there, she looked very normal. And in the catechism class that my dad made us go to, I had one of these, I don't know what you call it, but you know, I can listen to all these different conversations at the same time, and I know what's going on. And even though I'd steal a bag of candy every Saturday morning and eat it all through class and talk, and when the pastor would ask me a question, I'd always know the answer. And we always had a Bible verse to learn. So I looked around and I thought, I wonder if they have a Bible verse. So I made sure I sat where I thought it was the end, and sure enough, they were all quoting a Bible verse, and I was the last one, and when it got to me, I said it. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Galatians 2:20.
Oh,
and I might as well have said, Paul, I want a cracker. I had no idea what I was saying. Well, in the Lutheran church, there was a big stained glass window with the head of Christ. And all of a sudden, while Don Morrissey was talking, y'all are very faithful to me, even listening with all this craziness. Anyway, I realized Jesus was alive and he was real. And because I was a ding-a-ling, I didn't know how to ask Jesus in my heart, but God just jumped in. And when I left that night, Jewel Morrissey gave me a book called Peace with God by Billy Graham. And when I got home, I started reading it. My husband started drinking. And I said, I want to go back. He said, we're not going back. I said, but I want to go back. And he slapped me. He said, we're not going back. And so I hid behind a chair. And my first official prayer to God as I was holding that book and I saw a lamp flying was, I'll never deny you, I'll never deny you, I'll never deny you. That was my first real prayer to God. But I'm so thankful that 69 years ago, God saved this crazy girl. And I thank the Lord that I have not denied him. And I've been through a bunch of stuff, but I tell you what, God is faithful and he is real. And all you have to do is say, here I am, Lord, and he'll do the rest.
Amen.
Okay, Dad.
No, you need to share about your Bible.